Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Goal Line Hockey as we continue the season outlook series today as we take a look at the Pittsburgh Penguins. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe, and let's take a look at the Pittsburgh Penguins. So looking at the points leaders for the Pittsburgh Penguins, starting things off with no surprise to anybody, Sidney Crosby with 100 points. So another great year for Sid. And really no surprises here. He is an unbelievable player. He's done it year after year after year. He gets to the 100-point plateau again. Great season for Sid. Phil Kessel, 82 points. That's 82 points in 82 games, so a point per game throughout the entire season. Not too bad for Phil. And he's someone that we're going to talk about later for other reasons. Jake Guentzel, 76 points, so a good season for Guentzel. Maybe not as much as people would expect. Maybe, playing with Crosby, they expect a little bit more from him, Malkin and Kessel. But Guentzel had a really good season. Malkin, 72 points. He missed significant time this season with injuries and things like that. So Malkin, I think that's a little bit deceptive. I think he's more of a point-per-game player if he plays the whole season. Kris Letang, 56 points. So another guy that missed, significant time. He only played 65 games this season. More like a 60, 65-point defenseman for the Pittsburgh Penguins on a good season. And you could start to tell here that injuries and staying in the lineup and, maybe lackluster performance during the regular season at varying times kind of led to the demise of this season for the Pittsburgh Penguins. All right, so let's get right into this. So looking at the record, 44 wins for the Pittsburgh Penguins, 26 losses, and 12 overtime or shootout losses. That gives you 100 points on the season. So this is not a bad season for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're starting to get now into these teams that have missed the playoffs, and 100 points, great season for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Third in the Metropolitan Division behind the Islanders and the Caps. And, looking at the Penguins, they were swept in the first round by the New York Islanders. Crosby had 1 point in the 4 games. Those top two lines were, basically shut down for this series, and the Islanders did a really good job at containing the Penguins, and the Penguins really had no answers. But hope is not lost for the Penguins. They've got some prospects down in Wilkes-Barre, and also, in World Juniors, former, first-round picks, second-round picks, third-round picks, pretty early draft picks for the Penguins over the years that Jimmy Rutherford has been keeping recently. Those guys happen to be named, some guys that they have are Justin Almeida, Jan Drozg, and Cole Addison. So there's some defensemen there, and we'll see what happens with the Penguins with some of these guys. We'll see what, do any of them get implemented into the lineup next year under Mike Sullivan? How much of a change are the Penguins really looking at in terms of next season? Just a quick look. Like I mentioned, the Penguins were shut down by the Islanders in this first round. The defensemen seemed, very aggressive in this series, and throughout most of the season, they're known to, you look at guys like Letang, or Limana, they're aggressive, and they want to get points, and unfortunately, that kind of backfired in their face against the Islanders, who were very opportunistic, wait for their opportunities to come, and that definitely costed the Penguins. I'm going to be completely honest, Matt Murray didn't look that great, and he played well in the early parts of games, and I remember I went to game 2, and he was playing unbelievable. He was standing on his head making highlight reel saves in the first 2 periods. I said, let's see what it looks like in the third period, because during the season, he would do this all the time. He'd keep the Penguins in games, which is good. That you keep your team in games, but late in the game when they really need you to shut it down, Murray has been known to give up one or two, kind of dribbly, weak goals, and the Penguins would lose those games. And that was kind of the story of this series. Was he gave up some tough goals. There wasn't enough goal scoring from, the big guys like Crosby and Malkin, Gensel, Kessel. You go on about this list of guys that should be scoring more or should have scored more in this series, and it backfired on the Penguins. There's talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins and the culture of this team. They've always been known to be a running gun, fast team. You've got the skill, you've got the speed, But I think this team needs, to look more toward a structured game, more defensive, trying to keep, play really well in your own zone and, push the puck in deep in the offensive zone and make your opponent play more in their defensive zone, tire them out, and force them to really work hard on their own end. And that's what the Islanders have mastered to a T, and that's why they beat the Pittsburgh Penguins in this round really so easily. There's been rumors now, as I mentioned earlier, about Phil Kessel. Kessel is one of those guys, he has a shelf life, and it seems like his life with the Pittsburgh Penguins is probably coming to an end. There was some talk that, post game after Game 4 in the locker room, he was said to say, well, I'm not going to be back in the fall anyway, things like that. So you could tell there's a lot of frustration. Again, that's right after a Game 4 where they are eliminated, so there's a lot of emotion there. So I completely understand the frustration, and nobody wants to get traded, and I'm sure Kessel doesn't, but maybe it could end up being a good thing for him in the right system. And then we're going to take a look at some of the defensemen that could be talked about being moved. Kris Letang, Oli Mata. I wonder if a team like the Montreal Canadiens, to make that defense a little bit stronger, would consider adding a guy like Kris Letang. He's a French guy, Letang is, and I think he would really be a good fit with the Canadiens. What the Canadiens give up necessarily, I'm not sure, but there is something to be said about that. Maybe it's a swap defenseman for a defenseman of some sort. Maybe they get something like that done. But Letang, a pretty good hockey player. He's just, again, I think he's, not that he's overstayed his time in Pittsburgh, but I think they need a real shakeup. This is the second year that the Penguins have kind of dropped the ball. They lost to the Caps last year. They lose to the Islanders this year. They're starting to sense a pattern that these big teams, the Caps with Wilson and DSP, and you go up and down. There's some really great guys that are further down the lineup in terms of the forward depth and the defensive depth, but they really grind you down and make life really difficult for you. And I think the Pittsburgh Penguins' problem is they don't make life difficult enough for their opponent, after the whistle and things like that. I really like Patrick Hornquist. I think that's a guy that they should keep. I think he's a guy to build around in terms of that culture. It's weird to be saying to build around Patrick Hornquist, but truly, I think he is a guy that really, he is the kind of guy that you want your team to be more like. Difficult, we saw what he did with Robin Leonard in Game 4. He was really, bugging him and bothering him. I think he did a really good job of that. I feel like more of the Penguins need to be doing that. Alright, so looking at next year, and this is tough to predict right now. I'll be doing another prediction over the summer about this, but as of right now, I think the ceiling is they could win a round, but more legitimately, I would not be surprised if the Pittsburgh Penguins miss the playoffs next season. They've made it 13 straight years. We just talked about the Minnesota Wild, the Detroit Red Wings, and we're seeing a change of the guard around the NHL. We see how wide open the league is right now, and there's a lot of room for movement and things like that, and I think one of those Atlantic teams could be stealing a spot from the Pittsburgh Penguins toward the end of the season next year. But you can never doubt Sid Crosby, Evgeni Malkin, Letang, who's currently still on the team. And if Matt Murray can get hot like he did with those cup runs, boy, the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be tough to deal with. So thank you for watching us here at Goal Line Hockey. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and just check our other season outlook series videos. Starting to wind down now as we're in the playoffs. It's going to be a little bit slow with these season outlook series as we're trying to keep up with the playoffs. But I appreciate you all sticking it out and hanging with me here. And thank you for watching. Have a good one.